Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Strikes Back. My name is George, and you're listening to the weekly movie show with the boy Connor.
Hello.
We're Benny-less this week, aren't we?
Yeah. No Ben. You
Just
can get
you
anyone
and-
to replace me.
Just you and me.
Okay, sorry.
Just you and me, bro.
Yeah. It's nice to catch up with you, George.
Yeah, man.
Not have him distract us.
Yeah. So we got a few things to talk about this week, guys. A few DC updates, plus a trailer for The Nun, and George Lucas has also revealed what he wanted to do with episodes 7, 8, and 9. And I'm sure, Connor, you're ready to rip into it because I don't know how good it sounds.
It looks
man.
batshit insane.
If midichlorians sound bad to you, I don't think you're going to like this.
Yeah.
But let's catch up on what we've been watching this week. We went to see a few movies at Sydney Film Festival this week, which was pretty cool.
We did. We saw American Animals, which was, I'm not too afraid to say that. I think that was pretty spectacular, actually. I was really impressed with that.
I went in thinking it was going to be a solid film, and I came out with my expectations really surpassed. I thought he did a fantastic job with it, and some elements that I wasn't expecting from the trailer in terms of like some of the documentary aspects of the film.
Yeah. It kind of took a bit of a left turn right at the beginning, and set it up as a different type of film, which wasn't a bad turn at all. It was actually really good. I thought it added to it. So yeah, we saw that.
Really fresh, yeah. And then we saw Ghost Stories.
Ghost Stories, another really spectacular film. I think we can talk a little. I think we're gonna have reviews out for those two.
We'll do a review for those.
But suffice it to say, I was really impressed with that one as well.
That one, and we'll get more into it with the review. But as an anthology horror kind of thing, really just kind of hit the mark where it needed to, and I was left very satisfied.
Yeah. So apart from the Sydney Film Festivals that we've gone to, what have you been watching this week?
I watched a Netflix film called the the Something of Jane Doe, the Autopsy of Jane Doe. That's exactly what it's called. A horror film, and it's set in a morgue for the most part, and kind of like a cool sort of one night horror film. You know, it takes place over around an 8-hour period.
Yeah. And
I kind of like those films. It keeps it contained, keeps it very sort of immediate, and you're in a single moment experiencing that. And for it did that fantastically well. It's kind of like about these two guys that work in a morgue, and this body gets wheeled in late at night, and they start sort of conducting the autopsy, and things start sort of they uncover interesting things and things that don't make sense, and trippy stuff starts happening around them, and
it's very contained though.
Quite of an effective horror film. I didn't really go anywhere super fresh or new, but quite a solid little 90-minute Netflix kind of one and done.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you, man?
I'm actually really disappointed Ben isn't here. Because we had kind of talked about this before. I watched How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Oh, yeah. You watched one last week.
Watched one last week, watched the second one this week. I still think it's a really solid film. I know Ben said that he kind of really didn't like it, I think, based on his expectations of what 2 should have been. I thought it was still a really solid film. It doesn't touch 1, I think. I think that 1 is such a perfect little film, perfect little animation, that it would have been hard to reach those heights. But nonetheless, thought it was really solid. There's a couple of things I would have liked to have changed, just kind of around the characters, and some of the dialogue seemed a little bit forced, and some moments seemed a little bit just not quite as natural as the first one.
Okay. Yeah, that can happen with sequels. Sometimes the first one is just that one complete piece, and the sequel adds onto it, and it seems a bit clunky sometimes. What to do with the characters, where do they go, how to make a better enemy than the first one.
How you develop, and I think they'll run into those same problems with the third one that's going to be coming out soon. I think that they will have a really tough time trying to make something that is a bit more new and kind of feels a little bit fresh.
Did watching it again make you more excited for 3 or less excited?
I don't know if it made me more or less excited. I think I'm really keen to see it, but it's kind of tempered by the fact that I understand that they have a big challenge ahead of them to make it anywhere near as good as the first. I watched that, and for the first time in its entirety, I watched Gods of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt, the Alex
Proyas
film.
Yeah.
I should preface this by saying the reason that I watched Gods of Egypt was because there was a bunch of the guys that got together, and we had just finished watching the soccer, and we wanted to just chuck something on. We used to like put on really bad movies and then just make fun of them. You'd call out funny things, see who could get the biggest laugh type thing, and this seemed like a perfect candidate to chuck on the screen and have a couple beers and watch. So yeah, I made it through the entire thing. It was spectacularly bad. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. I saw it in the cinema.
It's really, really bad.
It's funny you bring this up because luckily this week a few pretty spectacular guys came on board for an interview, which we'll have up next week. So it's graphic designers and artists, Dane Hallett and Matthew Hatton, and then art director as well, Charlie Revai. And these guys have worked on a number of features, including Alien Covenant, but they worked on Gods of Egypt and as well as Paradise Lost. No, a few of them did. Okay. But it was interesting to hear them talk about Gods of Egypt, and it was one of those films that was just, I don't know how many people liked it.
Did people like it? Is that a popular film?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I assumed that it bombed. It's got some pretty heavy hitters in terms of star power. It had Jeffrey Rush, and it had the guy from Game of Thrones.
I was about to say Jared Leto. Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikolai Thingo.
Yeah, I said heavy hitters, not.
Yeah.
But like, it just, there's so much wrong with this film, and this is one of the things I found most annoying about this film is that this is a textbook film on how not to use exposition. Because what we began to notice throughout the entire film is that every little plot point was painfully explained by the characters or a narrator. Like, exposition was horrific in this film. And for a film that I think at least tried to look really good, they never really showed much. They had to tell you. And that was really frustrating. I mean, it was one of the many things that made this film frustrating, but it was
hit you over the head stuff.
Yeah, it was just like, things that were fairly obvious or that you could at least kind of figure out a little bit, and then you'd have the character do a little monologue about it, and you're like, I know this. I'm not an idiot. Please don't treat me like it.
Yeah.
It was textbook on bad storytelling or bad script writing, I suppose.
Yeah, because Proyas had a film called Paradise Lost that got canned. Bradley Cooper was supposed to be in it, and a lot of those were reincorporated into Gods of Egypt, a lot of those ideas. We talked about that on the podcast. So it'll be up next week, guys. Definitely go check it out. It was a fantastic to speak with those guys, and a real great honor. But yeah, Gods of Egypt is one of those ones where...
I want to know what the intention was. For me, it's really important to... Because I think that there's a number of things that can go wrong with films. Like, you can maybe not have the budget to realize your vision. You might have producers or studios that want to meddle in that vision, or you maybe just don't have the skill to have that vision. I'd love to see what he meant for this film, like what he saw in this film.
Well, he was very, very outspoken in his... basically the reviews that came out from the film, it got destroyed, basically. And he was came out with pretty raging on social media, raging in posts, and it wasn't really a great look, unfortunately.
Well, if you're gonna, kind of rage against fans, make sure that you have the high ground. Like, make sure that you're
and critics as well.
Yeah. Make sure that you're in a position where like, if he's...
You've got leverage.
Yeah, if this is the hill that he's deciding to die on, if this is the film that he wanted to make, then he probably deserves every little bit of criticism coming his way. That's horrific.
I think as well, you've got to take it in your stride. You're going to get criticism. I mean, look at something like Hereditary, which critics gave overwhelmingly positive reviews to, versus the fan reviews, which have been just awful. It's been destroyed. But it's like you got to take that in your stride. You got to take that with grace.
Pull a Rian Johnson. Just be like, I don't give a fuck. I made a Star Wars film. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, I
Got to Egypt. I have no desire to ever watch that film again.
Oh yeah, no, God no.
Guys, so we'll have our Incredibles 2 review up right about now, so definitely don't forget to check that out. And next week, as I've mentioned, we'll have this interview with the guys who worked on Alien Covenant. And as I said, it's a really fantastic episode, and we hope to do more of these kind of industry episodes. I'm really hyping this.
Yeah, you're hyping because because me and Ben aren't involved in this one. This was just you.
Yeah,
guys, it's really great. This is I've
this is the best episode yet.
I've done a fantastic job. I'm kind of amazing. All right, keep a lid on it, George.
Hey, I landed the interview, so I get to do the interview. That's how it works here. But don't worry, man. I'll throw you a bone sometime soon.
Okay, that's very kind of you. Very kind of you.
Let's get into some news.
Yeah, all right. Well, seeing as Ben isn't here, I get to take my old job back. I get to
reinstated.
Our first piece of news is Aquaman. We've got a first image of Black Manta. So James Wan has come out and talked about it. He's got a quote here about the character. He said he's part mercenary but full-time pirate who his suit will look like some crazy alien from outer space. Black Manta is a really interesting character who is somehow factored into this story, but our main story is about Jason and Patrick. I love how he says is somehow factored into this story, as if he doesn't know how that's going to play out yet. It sounds very much like, oh yeah, we've got a thing. We'll make it work. Don't you worry about that.
we know what's going on. We know what movies are slated to come out in the future. Yeah, I think this is a cool image. It seems to be like going for a very retro futurism kind of look. It almost reminds you of something out of Incredibles. It's kind of like that old sort of retro 50s kind of style. But I really have very little to say on the character of Black Manta.
I have very little to say about the character of Aquaman. I mean, and James Wan has gone on and talked about, this character of Aquaman and how interesting it is. And look, I hope they make him interesting. I'd like to say he was one of the more interesting things about Justice League, but to be honest, I barely remember that movie.
Yeah, you've erased it from the memory banks for
Pretty
good
much.
reason.
Yeah.
I, as I've said many, many times on the podcast, the only reason why I have any intrigue behind this is James Wan and the fact that he's attached to it. I mean, look what he did with Insidious, the haunted house genre. He took it to a new level. He brought something fresh to it, and I think he's going to bring something fresh to this film. He's actually come out with a quote this week, and he said, "The water world my movie takes place in is so separate and so far apart from previous DC movies. It's like I'm making my own sci-fi fantasy film. This is a whole new underwater world nobody has seen before in live action." So clearly he's trying to distance it from Justice League.
Which I think is a good idea. I don't think that DC has taken enough time and effort into building kind of the standalone movies for this particular DCEU. I think that Superman was a really good... Superman and Wonder Woman, Man of Steel and Wonder Woman were good starts. But I think before they made the Justice League, each one of them should have had an individual film. I don't think Justice League should have been where all these characters and all these important characters get introduced. You might be able to, get away with that with like a Hawkeye or, one of those kind of second tier characters. But these are meant to be like heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And to have, that come through like that is just really disappointing. So I understand where he's going with this. I hope that they do focus just on Aquaman. I don't know about this underwater world, though. I think it's just going to... in my head, I don't know how it's going to look good. Or if it can look good underwater. Because that scene in Justice League was weird.
With the air bubble?
Yeah.
Yeah, so from memory, in Justice League, they had to go into the air bubble to communicate.
But that surely that can't be the way that they're going to...
I think they're going to undo that in this.
They'd have to. I mean, like, if the whole concept of an underwater world... They've
evolved in this environment. Of course, they're going to be able to communicate in that environment and not need air bubbles.
Just that's silly.
Yeah, very, very silly. Very, very comic booky. But I really wish that this had come out before Justice League, as you said. I think the payoff would have been fantastic. Imagine if Aquaman's good. You know, then you add to the list that you just mentioned 3 films. You know, that would have been maybe enough to say the DCEU is not under as much sort of, I don't know, the scaffolding isn't there in place. I mean, it would have had more anchors in place.
If Aquaman is good, then they will have 3 good films.
Not outstanding, but
not
good.
Outstanding. None of them have been outstanding. Man of Steel was a visually pretty spectacular, and I quite liked Man of Steel. Wonder Woman is kind of the exact opposite. It wasn't very visually stunning, but I thought the story was really strong up until that last scene, or that last act, I suppose. So yeah, I think if they have 3 good films and 3 proper stinkers, that might be enough to keep it afloat for now.
Yeah.
But if the big question is if this isn't good, then I don't know where you go with it.
I mean, it's funny how people will say to no end how DC are in the lurch and they'll never make it out, but you're really only as good as your last film. And remember when Wonder Woman came out, the DC finally had a lot of good equity come towards the brand. And I think people, when Wonder Woman came out and the positive reception it got, I think people were like, fuck, if they follow this up with Justice League, if that works out, they are in a really good space. But then Justice League completely undid that. So now if Aquaman's solid, it goes back to that same principle. You're only as good as your last film. Hopefully they can do it. But we've got some more DC news that's just kind of changing up the game. So who knows what's going on.
Our second news story is actually Geoff Johns is exiting the DC. You know, I think he will write Green Lantern Corp, which is a planned movie for the DCEU. Whether it actually gets made is an entirely different story unto itself.
Yeah.
So Johns will be stepping down from his post as DC Entertainment President and Chief Executive Officer. And he'll be just doing writing/producing for WB and DC.
Yeah. So he's had the role as Chief Creative Officer since 2010, and he's had the role of DC Entertainment President only since 2016. So he's been around for a while.
He's kind of like the Feige of the DC, or at least in title, at least.
That's how he's generally perceived. Yeah.
Which I mean, for better or for worse, I guess. I mean, it hasn't really
worked out,
gone that well.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, which, you know, if you want any number of them, watch any of our podcasts where we talk about DC. We're happy to tell them where they went wrong.
Yeah.
But this isn't the first departure from DC, major departure. Last week, DC Entertainment President Diane Nelson exited as well. Yeah. This is starting to either feel like people jumping ship, or there's some major restructuring happening.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it feels like the first domino has fallen, and now John's leaving. Now it's starting to really sort of snowball. And as you said, there's a lot of changes going on at DC, and I think they really need that.
Yep. Either way, we'll see a bit of a shift in direction for these movies in the future. If
Geoff Johns did have the role of Feige and really was making those kind of decisions, it really, I don't think he was making the best decisions for the brand. I don't think he was commissioning the right movies. And I think they, as you said, they always were trying to accelerate too fast without putting down the groundwork. Yeah. So they really kind of fucked up this whole DCEU era.
Yeah.
And that Marvel is the clear winner.
Oh, I mean,
in this era.
It doesn't even matter what metric you go by. I mean, even if you consider most of the Marvel movies good movies, their hit rate for that is well above DC.
Yep.
Yeah, so
I think this is really great. It's curious that he's staying on to write Green Lantern Corps. I don't know how that movie works at the cinema. I don't know how that property works at the cinema is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
it's a tough one to get right.
Well, I mean, it's already had a major failure in the previous Green Lantern film. That's a big hole to climb out of.
Is it is it weird to you that he's staying on board in this more creative writer, a lower tier capacity after coming from that CCO position?
This sounds like someone that is being forced out. I don't think this was his decision. If he was jumping ship, I think he'd probably get away as far away from DC as humanly possible. I think this sounds like someone said you don't like they're doing some major reshuffling. They know they need to change some things. And at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. So I think he's been reassigned.
Kind of like a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah. Like you've had your time. Yep. It's not worked.
Yep.
Quit while you're less behind.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm really unsure about Green Lantern Corps. I just not sure how that works.
Yeah, look,
you're gonna have to get some pretty amazing people on that.
Yeah. I am no more or less, excited for or concerned for or anything like that for this movie than I am any other DC film. Because I think I've learned my lesson with that. I was excited to see Superman. I was excited to see their iteration of Batman. I was excited to see a lot of the characters in Suicide Squad. And it doesn't matter how, every time I get excited for a DC character to come out, I feel like I'm being, disappointed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at this point, I'm just kind of like, just make the film. I have no expectations. Just don't destroy some of the characters that I love.
Yeah.
Too horribly.
Yeah. Seems like this week is the week of DC.
This is the week. We've got lots of DC news. Our next piece of news is Todd Philips' Joker film is expected to shoot this fall with Joaquin Phoenix and a small budget.
Joaquin Phoenix.
I know.
This is our little joke though.
Yeah.
We'll keep it going.
Yeah.
So last week we talked about the Jared Leto Joker film that's coming. And now this is commissioned. And evidently there's rumors that they're going to kind of brand it as a DC Dark. So this Joaquin Phoenix one is going to be in this DC Dark or DC Black branding. So I said last week, how are the general audience going to keep up with all 2 standalone Joker movies?
But people have
branded in this way. You can make this work.
People have been able to keep track more or less of DC's multiple films on the animation side, at least, pretty well. They have a Joker film come out once a year or twice a year.
But it's like,
so I think that
I feel like it's a different kind of audience that's watching the animated films to going to the Cinemaplex and watching Suicide Squad or the DCEU films.
Definitely going to be marketed to a wider audience. But I feel like they're not too concerned about that, because if they're going to go low budget, then the expectations aren't as high then.
I've always loved what I've always struggled with comic books is these properties like Batman, Superman, these legacy characters, years and years and years and years of iteration upon iteration, and the continuity gets so convoluted. I love these one-off interpretations. Something like The Killing Joke, or where it's just one artist doing one story. It's kind of a standalone interpretation of the character. It's not in this fuck off continuity, but it has a very sort of specific tone of voice. And I feel like this is the first step towards that kind of thing. It's not kind of part of this big universe. It's kind of like a one-off. Maybe there's never going to be a sequel to it. And I like that, and I hope they explore that more.
Yeah, no, they're clearly not winning at the whole shared universe game. So maybe it's time to start looking at what has been successful for them, which is, as you said, the standalones. And I wouldn't necessarily think that's a bad idea. I get my fix of shared universe from Marvel, and that's great. And there's something I think to be offered by DC. I don't think that they need to do the exact same thing as Marvel. So yeah, I'm excited for this. But we'll see.
Are you concerned about the fact that there's going to be these 2 Joker films? Do you think that's weird?
Am I concerned? Look, my level of expectation or
Anticipation.
Yeah, just my involvement within the DC at this point, like the amount of effort that I put into thinking or concerning myself with it is so low at the moment that I don't care.
Yeah.
I think that I think they've spent any goodwill that they have. So as far as I'm concerned, give it a go.
There's this other podcast out there called DC Movie News. They feature on Collider's Schmodown movie trivia comp. And I watched, I actually dialed them in a couple weeks ago on YouTube. And it was so sad. Like all the headlines are like, this movie's gone. Like I sort of watched sort of every month from this year, I watched one of the podcasts. And it was all like, yeah, Justice League is doing so shit. And like this guy's dropped down, and it was really like there was no hope for Superman. The symbol of hope. There was no hope in this podcast. It was very sad.
At a certain point, I have a bit of admiration for anyone that is a DCEU fan.
Yeah,
because if you're still like singing DC's praises right now,
stuck it out.
That is almost impressive. It's kind of delusional.
Very delusional.
But at the same time, like, impressive.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be easy. And I
gotta give a tip of a hat to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I sympathize. Like, I look at Ben when he watches DC films, and it's like watching someone's inner child just get crushed, because he's a serious DC fan. He loves DC.
Yeah.
And he loves those characters and those properties. And yeah, I think that you can either go two ways about it. You go Ben's route, which is just, and I think rightfully so, have anger towards DC for what they've done. Or you could just be like, no, this is my hill. I'm going to stand on it. I'll die on it if I have to.
Yeah.
DC's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Good luck to him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how you defend Batman v Superman.
I don't know how people defend Justice League. that is what really surprises me.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Or even Suicide Squad.
I can kind of see defending Suicide Squad.
Oh God, no.
Anyway, that's for another podcast.
So we've got some non-DC movie news, which is still Warner Brothers news, though. This is something interesting that I saw coming out of America. Warner Bros. Has put a crackdown on Potter festivals. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this is because
Harry Potter, right?
Like Harry Potter festivals. And a lot of these started as really small get-togethers, and some of these festivals are now like 45,000 people. Like these are big events. Like people come and they do the Meet Dumbledore, or do your little wand waving with Harry Potter type thing. And it's a really cool kind of facet of the fandom, I think.
And these festivals are fan generated.
So they're not from Warner Bros., which means that Warner Bros. Has now come out and given a lot of desist notices to these festivals, saying you can't use any of the Harry Potter characters or names in your official advertising or any kind of branding or anything like that. Which is very interesting to me.
It's an interesting move. Yeah. And quite a cold move.
Very cold move. And a lot of fans have reached out to J.K. Rowling, and she has been relatively silent on the subject.
Yeah, her hands are tied.
I don't think that she could do anything, even if she wanted to.
She signed her life away.
Pretty much. And to me, it's kind of a stark realization that, for one thing, this is money. This is business. Like, oftentimes we think of as a fandom for any particular property, we think we kind of own a little bit about this, because we made this successful, so we deserve something back. And it's just Warner Brothers coming down and being like, you don't own shit. We own it. Which is, as you said, a cold move.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because in one regard, protect the brand. Make sure the brand is well represented in every interaction that people have. And when these fan things come into play, Warner Brothers loses control. That if something happens there, so there's a negative association there, does that impact the Harry Potter brand? And in Warner Brothers' mind, the fact that they're doing this means that they want to tighten the control. Mm-hmm. They don't want for any sort of, they want to be watertight, I guess.
Yeah.
But in the same token, it's like this is the fact that people are putting these on shows how powerful the story is and the brand of Harry Potter. And you doing this, you're putting such a negative association to that. Like, are you negatively impacting the brand for people to not go out there and celebrate? Can you then, put on an Instagram photo, with the brand in it? Like, where does the line
get drawn?
Yeah.
It's for them, it's any kind of commercial activity that uses the Harry Potter brand. So if you're charging tickets for these things, or if you're doing anything like that, which I imagine they would have to do to, at the very least, cover the expenses.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they have already received a little bit of negative press. I mean, the statement that was put out by so there was a Harry Potter festival, I think out of Philadelphia, have slammed them by saying it's almost as if Warner Bros. Has been taken over by Voldemort trying to use dark magic to destroy the light of a little town.
Wow. That's brutal.
Yeah,
that sort of puts it into context, huh?
It does. It's incredibly nerdy, but also a damning indictment.
Good summation.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Whether that does more damage to at least to the WB brand that's associated or owned. So yeah, Warner Brothers is having a tough time.
Yeah,
and I reckon that they've got one brand that's really, really strong in Harry Potter, because Harry Potter is up there with Marvel, with Star Wars, Star Trek. Like, it's that people take that brand very seriously.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and they have to keep that. They have to keep her going because the 7 books are done. Fantastic Beasts. They're gonna cultivate that Harry Potter Wizarding World.
Yeah.
New games. Like, got to keep that Harry Potter juggernaut going.
Yeah.
Because it is a cash cow.
It is.
But this is sad, man. I think, I've seen like stuff on Facebook, people doing Quidditch World Cups.
Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah, man.
And how good is that?
Fuck yeah.
It in terms of fan bases, like big fan bases, I feel like Harry Potter's been pretty good lately.
Oh god, compared to the Star Wars fans. God.
Yeah,
They're top of the class.
Each fan base has their time in the sun for being particularly
DC fans
annoying.
are delusional. Harry Potter fans are, upset and just very like
triggered.
Good. And Star Wars fans are just like these toxic, filled with just hatred and anger and racism. God,
it's weird.
Not good.
And not all fans. We should specify that.
And Marvel fans are pretty good on the whole.
I'm trying to think if they've done anything. Well, they don't have anything to complain about yet.
They're
on the top of the world. They're
the
laughing.
At least they're smelling the roses.
Yeah. Just wait until someone fucks up one of their movies, and then you'll hear it. Then you'll see the nastiness.
Yeah.
They've got a property that's about to feature a woman, so we'll see how they deal with that.
Whoa.
Ooh. Another interesting story that's come out is Terry Gilliam has lost his court case out of France for his Don Quixote, the legal rights to that. So an ex-producer sued them, and in the midst of this court case, they distributed the film. They went to Cannes, and he's just lost this court case, which basically means that he wasn't allowed to do any of that in retrospect. And it's worth a read of some of the language that's being used by the people that are suing him. But I'll read you a quote. "We will be seeking damages with interest from all the people involved in this illegal production, and above all those that were complicit in its illegal exploitation. We're holding everyone responsible."
Wow.
So apparently they are going after not just Terry Gilliam, but they're going after the people at Cannes that helped produce it or that helped get it up on the screen. They're going after, producers of the film. They're going after any player that seems to have in any way encouraged Terry Gilliam or contributed to this film or has received benefits from this film.
Nuts.
That is scary.
They sound like hell for leather. They're coming. Illegal. That's a very strong word to use twice in a statement. That's directly stating their viewpoint, and it's interesting to hear about licensing in films. One thing that came up in that podcast with Dane and the guys was owning the rights to these images.
Excuse me for a moment. I need to plug in my laptop.
Owning the rights to images. So you're in the art department of a film. you know, you're doing you produce X amount of images, drawings, sculptures. You know, at the end of the day, you don't own those. And even though you have drawn them, you don't own those, and you might not be able to use them in your portfolio until post that film's released because there might be some spoilers, or, you know, they, at the end of the day, own the complete control. So, you know, obviously Terry Gilliam feels that I own this through a sort of creative tie to the film. I don't know the full extent of this, but I find those legal, you know, the creator, the writer doesn't own the film. You know, the studio at the end of the day.
Insane.
It's like record labels with master copies of CDs. You know, post, you know, I think it's 65 years they own the licenses. And then, you know, I can do whatever I want with that. I can put out a greatest hits CD. I can do anything I want with this catalog for X amount of time. I think the legal and the rights usage for intellectual property is a very interesting thing, and I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple of articles up there on this particular case. Apparently, it's relatively unique because, you know, people just don't release shit without permission because it's a dangerous move to make, and it hasn't paid off to Terry Gilliam, sorry. I feel like, though, because this has been such a shit show of a production for Terry, that he probably was like, fuck it, I'm so close, I want this out, like let's just push hell for leather, let's do this,
because this has taken
10
a
years.
long time to make and come together.
Yeah, it's crazy. So this movie does not seem to want to have a happy ending. All right, so we've got a little bit of box office updates.
Box office update, it's the newest segment.
These are Solo is our first one with $322.8 million.
Total haul right now sitting at $322.8 million.
Is insane.
Abysmal, huh?
That's genuinely insane. I don't even think that makes up the budget. I think they lost money on that.
I believe that the production budget alone was $275 million. And as we've said before, the rule of thumb is double that to incorporate all your marketing, advertising, promotion. So we're sitting at, you know, to break even, Solo needs to hit around $500 million.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest, if the production on that cost $270, I'll eat my hat. The first production maybe would have cost
That's the reported production.
I can almost guarantee you it did not cost that much. It cost well in advance of that.
Yeah, I reckon it would have definitely exceeded that. 100%. 300 million minimum.
Yeah, easily. But we do have some good news in terms of...
But before we get into good news, what does this say about Star Wars to you? Does this say... Does this metric say to you Star Wars fatigue has set in?
I think it says a couple things. I think that this was partially due to the fact that they tried to release two Star Wars films too close together. I think that the great thing about Star Wars is they seem like events. You know, that was like, I mean, people were crying when they found the trailer for
The Force Awakens.
Like, it was such a big moment, and I feel like you need some time to digest those types of moments. I think it looks like they're trying to break into the Marvel space, but I'll be honest, Marvel movies are not big events. You know, they're easily consumable little movies.
Yeah.
And that's where that works, because the grandeur and the kind of entertainment of Marvel is in the overall universe and adding little stories and stuff. Yeah. I think that's where you get entertainment out of that. With Star Wars, I want to see 2 hours of a spectacular, you know, space sci-fi.
A gripping tale. Yeah, I completely agree, man. It's that inherent DNA. Like the Marvel films, it's kind of got almost like a popcorn throwaway aspect. You know, it's just another superhero movie, but altogether, the sum of many make up something greater than they could ever imagine.
Yeah.
With Star Wars, like when Episode 3, when that came out, I was like, that's it. We're never getting a Star Wars movie again. You know, that's how special they felt. Mm-hmm. And now we've had 4 movies in 2.5 years. And, they don't feel as special anymore, and that's clearly reflected in this whole Solo box office haul. And I really think everyone needs to really reevaluate that scenario of when they made the call to boot Lord and Miller, because I think that was a massive fuck up. Because I think the fan base, a lot of goodwill went out the door with that.
So it's been interesting to see. There seems to be a bit of a divide, as there is with most Star Wars films I find now, in terms of whether they would have liked to have seen Lord and Miller stay on, or whether the current version, the Ron Howard version, is the preferable one. I think that the problem with this film was far deeper than that. I think that and I've mentioned this before, I think that any movie that goes to, or that attempts to play off nostalgia has already lost the battle. Or at least they have further to go than they think, simply because they don't think they have as far to go. With all these characters, if you're going to go back and do an origin story or anything like that, you already have the goodwill of your fan base. They already like that character for one reason or another. So I feel like a lot of people kind of think that it's going to be easy then to do an origin story, and that's simply not the case. And in fact, it's almost always the opposite.
Yep.
There's so much more that you're kind of playing with fire in that case.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that this poor haul is down to a lot of things. But I think mostly it's because we just got a Star Wars film, and they spent an enormously small amount of, or an incredibly small amount of. Sentences not work right now. I think that they didn't spend enough time on marketing.
Yeah.
I didn't think they let it build up.
We talked about that a lot in the lead up. Like, when is this Solo trailer going to drop? Every week we were sort of twiddling our thumbs waiting.
And the truth is, they're no longer the biggest player out there.
Star Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marvel is the big hitter.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to be defining box offices for at least the next couple years.
For sure.
And I think that, I don't know why, but I think Star Wars seemed to feel like it could change the tide of that, or maybe they could contend with that, which, as far as I'm concerned, is insane.
They definitely did. And they've been, this is, I mean, let's talk about Avengers Infinity War box office haul.
Which is our next, box office news. It's crossed 2 billion.
Damn. 2 billion. So this is the fourth film to cross 2 billion. We've got sitting at let's just round off the top 5 all-time box office earners. Got Avatar at 2.7 billion, Titanic at 2.1, Star Wars: The Force Awakens at 2.06, and then Infinity War just hitting 2 billion. And then the next one down is Jurassic World at 1.6. That's almost $350 million gap. That just shows you how fucking big this movie is.
Yeah, there's an entire film's budget in between 4 and 5. And then if you want to get specific, even between 1 and 2, that's $600 million.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. But I'm glad. And I hope it overtakes The Force Awakens. I'd like it to. I think that'll send a really good message to the people at Lucasfilm, because I really want Lucasfilm to make them more events, to make them more special.
I tend to agree. In this newest iteration of Star Wars, I have by far enjoyed the main storyline ones more than I've enjoyed the spin-offs. I think you're diluting the power of Star Wars with these spin-offs, and I've voiced trepidation with the upcoming projects. And I'll continue to voice those. I think that you're just diluting with like the Obi-Wan spin-off, the Boba Fett spin-off, the God knows how many different spin-offs. That just, for me, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not intriguing.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on. We do have some Marvel news apart from box offices. It's just been announced that the Captain Marvel composer, her name is, I'm definitely going to get this wrong, Pinar Toprak. Is that even close?
Pinar Toprak, something like that.
Should be something like that. The interesting thing about this is that it is the MC's first female composer for any
MCU's.
film.
Yeah.
This is, I was going to say interesting. It's not really interesting if you think about it. I mean, it's a composer. This shouldn't be a big thing, but I think the reason that this is in the news and everything is because Marvel is trying to position Captain America as their Wonder Woman.
Captain Marvel.
Sorry, Captain. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Captain Marvel as their Wonder Woman.
For sure.
Because, as we know, like Wonder Woman caused waves, like some serious waves, and particularly because she was this strong female superhero.
Yeah, and you know, we had a female director on that, and we got a female director involved in Captain Marvel, and now having a female to score, fantastic news. You know, more chicks on the bench, we always say. And
is that a common saying of yours, George?
That's what Benny always says. That's what Benny always says. So I think this is great, and more opportunities. You know, this is let's get some more different kind of people involved. And she's did a few cool things in terms of like smaller scale thrillers and horrors. But evidently, her big breakout was last year as the composer for the Superman prequel Krypton. And the video game Fortnite, doing some music on that. So she, you're not a Fortnite fan?
Well, I mean, those are not particularly big properties.
I think, you know, it's a stepping stone, and now her getting this, you know, it's just a gradual sort of moving up the hierarchy.
I feel that,
but Fortnite's huge, man.
Yeah, no, like it's
have your
fine,
name slapped on that. Shoo.
No. Like, I mean, all the more credit to her. I feel like the reason that we're talking about this, the reason that this is in the news in general, is because Marvel is putting a very particular spin on this. And again, you know, play to your strengths, and why not?
Yeah, I think it's a good way to position the film, and I'm pumped for it.
It's the obvious way to position that film.
Emily, she can move planets.
That's what Feige has kind of...
I think Brie Larson reiterated it this week. She said Captain Marvel can move planets. She's strong.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, what point should a character be capped?
Yeah, that sounds pretty damn powerful.
Yeah, I mean, like that seems like the kind of you can just fix all our problems.
Yeah,
because even Thanos is not.
Yeah, no way. Thanos is not that strong at all.
Yeah, I hope she doesn't come just into this universe and just fuck shit up.
Like, it literally just swoops in and like the rest of the movies I'm just hanging out, getting to know Wonder Woman.
I can move planets. I can take out Thanos. We're all good.
Yeah,
potentially.
Yeah. Ballsy move from Marvel.
Yeah. Have we just released the plot for
spoilers?
The next Avengers. Yeah. We will finish on some DC news. We started on it. We'll finish on it.
Nice.
Ben Affleck is likely out as Matt Reeves' script focuses on a younger Batman. I can only say this so many times and take it seriously. How many times has he been out?
I'm in, man. I'm out, man. I love DC. I don't like it. You know what? You know what's interesting about this story? And I was on the bus when I read this on the way to work. When I read this during the week, I thought to myself, I remember a time when Ben Affleck was like the next kind of like big swinging dick in Hollywood in terms of being the next director. I mean, when Argo picked up those Academy Awards, damn, he was on a roll. And to think of him and everyone was like, he's doing a Batman movie, man. This is going to be insane. The goodwill towards the guy was nuts. And to see the fall from grace and how people just don't even give a fuck that he's leaving the Batman. Yeah. I mean, nobody cares. It shows you it's really sort of indicative of the times we're in.
I can see how he would want to get out of that. I personally would have liked to have seen an Affleck Batman.
Fuck yeah, man. The Town? Like, imagine adding those gritty crime aspects to Batman.
Yeah. Look, I think he would have done a good job, but I totally get the idea that he wants to get out of that environment. I probably would as well.
Yeah.
If I was in his position. Yeah. I don't really care that he's leaving, which I think is probably all you need to say about the state of Batman right now, at least in the DCEU.
Yeah. But I think it's cool that they, maybe this is going to be part of the DC Dark thing. Maybe it's going to be its whole, just a completely separate Batman thing like Nolan's was. I think that's probably the best idea to go down.
I think that's how DC should approach this now.
Yeah.
All right. George, what time is it?
It's the time for the trailers.
Hey!
Yay.
All right. So we've got only 3 trailers this week, down from our 17 last week. That was insane. So the first one is one that I'm really excited for. It's The Nun.
The Nun.
The Nun. This is part of the Conjuring universe.
The Conjur-verse.
Which I think is probably, apart from Marvel, the only other really successful shared universe.
Yeah, probably.
And I mean successful in that it seems
it's released
cohesive.
one other movie.
Yeah. Well, no, they did. They had Annabelle. They had
Annabelle Creation.
The 2 Conjuring films.
And then this is the sort of...
Yeah, so they do seem to be building up a universe, which I think is really cool. I really love that it's in a genre other than the superhero sci-fi genre.
Completely.
Having this in a horror film is really cool.
The period setting of this is great as well.
Yeah.
I love that look they're going for.
There's something inherently creepy about monasteries and mental asylums.
Yep.
And I think that that it's going down to basics, long corridors and stone walls and shit, but it's fucking effective.
So in terms of anticipation, we're both on board. What do you think about the trailer as a whole? Because I was quite disappointed with the trailer. I thought it was fairly... it didn't give a lot away. It's more of a teaser, to be perfectly honest.
It is more of a teaser. I kind of like that. What I wanted to get out of that trailer, or what I'm glad I got out of that trailer, was the period setting.
Yep.
I think that was the big thing.
And it's looking good. It looks authentic, and the sets look creepy.
Yeah, and I think that's really all I need from this trailer. I mean,
That scare got you.
Did it?
Yeah, you... holy fuck! I was waiting for that.
George hyperbole.
Yeah. I'll video it next time, bro.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, man, I'm always down for this kind of horror film.
I think I sort of, every time I hear The Nun, I sort of chuckle to myself. It just sounds inherently funny. And then as well, when the logo came up, the N was flicked around like the 9 Inch Nails logo.
Oh,
so I had a little giggle. A little giggle.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for this. I want to see where they start taking these properties. Out of anything else, this is probably what I'm most excited about. Is this shared universe? I wonder if they'll give it a name though. Being 10
movies deep in the Conjur-verse, if they're going at the pedigree they're at, this is going to be a really awesome little cinematic universe.
Yeah, I'm very keen. Yeah, I think that they've gone about it the right way.
Yeah, completely.
All right. Well, sticking in the genre, we've also got a new Blumhouse film from Untilt. It's called DH Tilt. Unfriended: The Dark Web. So this is I guess,
sequel
to Unfriended, which was a God, how long ago did that come out?
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2016. Did you check that out?
No, I didn't. I didn't like the concept. I didn't like the filming style.
I loved it. I thought it was really cool. It's not amazing, but as a solid, very good horror film, it's a good one.
Yeah, no, it for whatever reason didn't grab me.
Inventive.
This one I might see. To be honest, it genuinely seems creepy.
Very similar setup.
Yeah.
The
gimmick is the same.
Yeah. The guy pops up in there in chat room and it's like, who's that?
Yeah.
They start talking to them. It's exactly the same setup, but having the dark web aspect adds a little more intrigue. I find it funny when they go into the dark web in the trailer, how it's like this sort of medieval sort of dungeon. I'm like, welcome to the dark web.
Definitely how the dark web works.
I don't know if it works like that, man.
Yeah, look, on the one hand, I like the creepiness aspect. I don't know why this trailer just kind of spoke to me. On the other hand, though, I think this is very much the same gimmick, and that's what they're really relying on, is the gimmick of it. And
For sure.
That always makes me hesitant with a film. They're running with that's found footage is a perfect example. If this movie is good, just film it like a normal movie. Don't use the gimmick of found footage.
Yep.
Yeah. BH Tilt is really doing it for me lately.
For sure.
They recently had Upgrade, which I thought was really good. Very solid film.
Go check out our review.
Yeah, I'm always down for some Boomhouse.
Yep.
Our last trailer is Billionaire Boys Club. This is an interesting film because it's the first movie that I've seen marketed that has Kevin Spacey in it. Yeah. And he is in it very sparingly. Particularly, well, he's a major character in it. So I wonder if this was meant to be released perhaps a little bit earlier.
Quite possibly.
And, with his recent controversies, they just weren't able to justify putting out the movie. Yeah,
because last year Ridley Scott, booted him off that bio.
Yeah, but he had already that was already a heavily marketed film.
Yeah, and then they reshot 10 Days with Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
And recut a trailer, put the film out on schedule. I mean, do you think it's a good idea having Spacey in this with that level of, that PR move?
Do you mean like financially smart, or do you mean like morally smart? Like,
I mean both.
I think that they're putting in relatively low amount of marketing into this. I think that they.
To see if they can make a couple bucks.
If I was to make my best guess, they've already written off this film.
They're just trying to recover the costs.
If that. They're just, let's see what we can get out of this and move on forward. I can guarantee you won't be on the press junket for it.
Yep.
Having said that, it seems like a cool little film. And I would love to have seen how they would have marketed it had Spacey not turned out to be a creep.
Reminded me a lot of Baby Driver. Ansel Elgort being in it, Kevin Spacey's got a car aspect.
Yeah.
It looks like a cool movie. And Taron Egerton's in it.
Yeah.
Who's fantastic. When he gets the right role, he is fantastic.
Those two, I think, are going to be relatively heavy hitters in the near future because I have
agree.
really enjoyed a lot of their roles.
Yeah, they're one role away from hitting that major superstar.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd be interested to check this out. But again, it feels like they've already written this movie off. They're not going to spend the time to make a good trailer or to really push it, or hell, I don't even know how wide of a distribution it's going to get.
Yeah, probably a good move. And also probably a good move to hop on your A-Wing because we're heading off to George's Star Wars Corner. Guys, we've got some kind of interesting news this week. We've obviously talked about Solo already, but George Lucas has gone on record to say what he would have done with episodes 7, 8, and 9. So I believe this is on James Cameron's new sci-fi show. So he said, George Lucas has said on the show, everyone hated it when we started talking about midichlorians in The Phantom Menace. A whole aspect of the film is about symbiotic relationships. It's about recognizing that we're not the boss. There's a whole ecosystem there. And the next 3 Star Wars films we're going to get into a microbiotic world. I just laughed then. But there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills. And the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. Yeah, man. I mean, I just laughed. I just laughed reading that quote because it just sounds dreadful. And I'm so glad, for all the shit we've talked about with Disney, I'm glad Lucasfilm has it in this iteration because this sounds disastrous.
I mean, I didn't even know where to start with that.
Let's start with midichlorians. What was your take on midichlorians in The Phantom Menace trying to explain the Force?
When I first watched Phantom Menace, I was pretty young.
Same.
And it was a continuation of Star Wars, so it didn't bother me that much.
I don't think I even actually took in that was what the function was.
Yeah. I mean,
just a space adventure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that when I look back on it, it pretty obviously seems like a silly idea. I far, 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 far prefer the explanation of the Force that Luke gives in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I thought that was a far better way to describe the Force. Leave a little bit of air of mystery to it.
For sure.
And kind of talk about it in a more ethereal sense.
Yeah, well, give it that mythological aspect, that hero's journey.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I was very down with that explanation. Having it boiled down to midichlorians, whatever the fuck it's called. That yeah, it seems a bit silly. I'm interested to see what he actually like, what these wills are. I'm not interested in the sense that I would have liked a movie about them. I'm interested to see like the level of his delusion that this would have been a good idea. Yeah. I mean, having said that, it's a fairly high level pitch.
Very.
But
I don't know. It just sounds like a very different type of film to what Star Wars is always kind of in its essence. You know, the hero's journey. The farm boy goes on this epic quest to become the hero, to slay the dragon. You know, that's ultimately what Star Wars is all about, but in a space setting. And this whole microbiotic world, like, am I talking about Pikmin here? Like, what the fuck? I don't know. It just sounds too alien. And that's what Star Wars isn't. It's not sci-fi. It's like fantasy. You know, of course, yes, of course it's the sci-fi, but it's not like Star Trek. Star Trek is like that more clinical sci-fi lived-in world. Yeah. Star Wars always felt like you're in a fantasy.
Star Wars never really struck me as being about the technology and the science fiction of it all. I mean, of course, you had lightsabers and you had spaceships and all that, but that's never really what drew me to Star Wars. It was, you know, the kind of the world building and the journey that the main character went on, which is what I felt like was lacking in a lot of the prequels. Yeah, the prequels lent a little bit more heavy towards the sci-fi aspect and
a cleaner, sleeker look.
Yeah, and they I think they lost a lot of the magic of the original
completely.
So yeah, I agree that sounds
dreadful.
Silly.
Definitively, your pitch has been
denied.
Sorry, George.
I wonder if he got a chance to pitch that to Disney. As because he was on a creative consult or something, and they were like, "So George, we're gonna do a new trilogy. What do you think?" Shit. Oh, I think that we should have something called the Wills and get the fuck out.
I mean, the Wills have been around for a long time, but not to this. I think they've been described in a very more ethereal way.
Yeah, like almost like gods, or maybe that's what he's talking about. But the way that it's been described here is very
sounds gross,
very weird.
Let's cap it off.
We've got a question of the week. It's one that I decided to ask you, George.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Or the other way around, whichever it was. It's if you had the ability, the resources, whatever it is, what kind of film would you create? And I mean, like in terms of like genre, and like, would you go for a little indie horror, or again, if you had the budget, would you go for a big sci-fi or a big fantasy adventure?
I'd love to do an indie horror.
I figured, yeah.
That just sounds like an absolute hoot. Another thing I'd love to do is maybe a more like indie sci-fi, like Moon or Source Code, something like that. But I think the one that I'm really intrigued by is an indie horror film.
Yeah. It's not an easy one. I mean, comedy and horror, I think, two of the hardest genres to get right.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it's so subjective. Like what one person finds funny, another person isn't going to find funny.
Look at Hereditary. What one person finds scary, atmospheric horror. That film didn't have jump scares. People sometimes think horror equates to jump scares. Yeah. And for me, that's not always the case.
Oh, I mean, American Animals, which we recently saw, gave me more anxiety than a lot of jump scare horror films out there.
For sure.
That's a masterclass in the way that you build atmospheres. Same thing with Sicario. There was a general uneasiness to that film that I think was really well. I think you could easily define Sicario as a horror film.
Yeah. For sure.
So yeah, I totally get that. I think that you're right on that.
What about you, man?
It's a tough one. I am also kind of drawn to quirky sci-fi in that kind of area. But if I were to do it, I think I might do historical fiction, or like it would probably be something a little bit more medieval side, because I like the world building that those movies encompass, and some of my favorite films like Lord of the Rings were so great because, you know, you got to build the world around you and you got to feel like you are authentically back in time and something like that. So I think movies that I would like to create are ones that you have to figure out what the world around you is, and that you can really immerse yourself in that. So like a big budget sci-fi or sorry, a big budget fantasy or a big budget like a historical drama or something like that. Yeah. I always thought I'd like to adapt. There's a historical fiction series called Gulden, called the Emperor series, and it goes through the life of Caesar and kind of takes it from when he was a boy all the way through, you know, his different campaigns and that. And it I always thought that would be really cool to see up on the screen.
The big screen?
Yeah.
In a movie format?
In you know, it'd have to be 4 or 5 movies or even in a TV series. I want to watch Rome though. That seems like it's pretty close.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, count me out. But no, that sounds like a cool idea. You know, I know you're really into that. We've spoken at length about Robin Hood, and Robin Hood, I do love. I mean, Lord of the Rings is case in point of just the attention to detail and the design and the world building is just phenomenal. Anyway, guys, let us know what kind of film you would want to create in the comments on YouTube, and of course, we're on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. So don't forget to subscribe and also like us on Facebook and Instagram for plenty of juicy content from the podcast Strikes Back. And as I said, Incredibles 2 review up right about now. Go scope that out. And American Animals review as well.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. We'll be back next week. And Benny should be here. I don't know.
I hope so.
Maybe we'll rock up.
Yeah.
Catch you next week, Con.
Catch you, mate.
See ya.